What is going on, guys? This is Jagnal back again with another video, and today the Dynasty deep dive for EA College Football just dropped, and oh my goodness, is this thing long? So like, look how long this is. I am scrolling. So it would probably take me an hour to go through this, and I feel like there has already been a lot of YouTubers who have posted about this. If you want to go watch them, like Bordeaux, Not the Expert, have all kind of broken down. I also think they've played the game, so they have more of an experience of it. But I want to give like my top three like features or things that I'm looking forward to for this game, and I had to break it into a Google Doc for that. So let's just go ahead and jump into it because there is a lot. And if you do like this kind of content, be sure to hit the subscribe button. I'm trying to get to 10,000 subscribers. That's kind of the goal. Maybe I'll do a giveaway around that time. I plan on doing a giveaway sometime soon, just because finally a part of the partner program, so I feel like I want to reinvest the money that I make from this channel back into it. So we'll just go ahead and jump into it. So I think the first feature that I'm excited for is customization slash attention to detail. I really feel like they hit it on the nail here. Now, one thing that is very much missing is there was nothing mentioning about roster editing, which I feel like they selectively left that out because I feel like there's not going to be a lot to do. I don't think you'll be able to change the player names, the ratings and stuff. I don't think that's going to be the case. Also, for recruiting, it doesn't seem like you'll be able to create a recruit or edit the players there. So it looks like they're just going to be automatically generated. So that is something that, in terms of customization, that we're not going to get. But I think also because of the NIL stuff like that, it's just kind of how it is. I think down the road when we get more games, this is the first game that's featuring college athletes getting paid for it. So the fact they were able to get the real players and get, like, they're keeping most of the stuff. Obviously, there's some things that you can't do, which is unfortunate, but that's kind of what you have to do to have the real players in. I wish you could do it after the players graduate, but that's just kind of what we're dealing with. So in terms of the conferences, we'll start off with that first. Custom conferences is a thing. You can't create a conference, which I know some people were a little bummed about, but I think the fact that you can customize your conferences is perfectly fine. I think a lot of people who are, excited about creating your own conference, I have some pushback for that because it's like, how are you going to do it? Are you going to create the logo? It could mess up a lot of things. So I think just custom conferences is what we like, and I'm glad it does that. So you can do 4 to 20 teams per conference with custom conference rules. So you can do your divisions on or off, which is a new feature versus NCAA 14. You can choose how many conference games you're playing. Is there a championship game? How do you determine who makes the championship game and where it's played? So that is a really cool feature. I mean, I'm glad they put that in. I know the Pac-12 has only 2 schools, so they literally had to like code in a rule to make the Pac-12 work, even though like they only have 2 players in their conference, or 2 teams. So maybe they're encouraging you to add some teams to that. So hopefully, I mean, I'm just excited. Yeah, I would say hopefully you add people to the Pac-12, but I think it'll still work. But that is kind of hilarious how the rule doesn't even work for the current Pac-12 or the Tupac, whatever we talking about, the conference that barely exists nowadays. And then also, once you join a conference, it changes the patches on the jerseys and logos on the field, which is something that I hope they brought into the game, but I didn't know how well they were going to execute it, like in terms of like the logos on the field and the patches. And they used James Madison as a good example, and it's really seamless. Like the patches look like they're supposed to be there. Like it doesn't seem like it's placed in a weird spot. Like it fits, it matches the team colors. They really hit it out of the park there. So I'm really excited to do a lot of conference realignment and just see how it works. So overall, I think that's awesome. I think that's great. I'm glad they're doing it. I know that was in the older games. It wasn't in Revamped because Revamped was like editing the actual textures themselves rather than them being dynamic. So I'm glad that's, a feature that was in the last game. And the thing is a lot of the Dynasty features from NCAA 14 are back, which I do think that this Dynasty mode is almost like carrying the torch of what NCAA 14 did. It's like almost like they realize all the things they did good with Dynasty back then and what the fans like, so they're just taking that, using that as the foundation, and kind of modernizing it. And I think that's probably the best way, and obviously probably the safest way to go forward, because it allows, we all know how the system works. So overall, I like this. Next up, we have schedules. So you can customize your out-of-conference schedule, so like you could do in the other games. But you can also do a week 0. So week 0 has officially been added, and then real matchups are programmed into the game. So for example, Georgia and FSU play in 2027, 2028, and he also mentioned another few teams. They're, they're set to play, and that is going to be in the game. So when you get to the 2027, FSU will play Georgia. So that is really cool. I'm wondering how that would work if you join a conference. Like, would that just override it, or can you get rid of them? I'm pretty sure you can remove those. I think you can remove any out of conference game. But it is cool that they're like kind of put in, so like they're locked in at least, so that you move down the line, you'll have some interesting home and homes. And then another cool feature would be Team Builder and Online Dynasty. Now, we knew that Team Builder was coming for Play Now and Offline Dynasty, but the fact that it's confirmed for a private Online Dynasty is awesome. And Dynasties overall for online, there's going to be 32 players, and you can do 30 seasons, and that's how it works for Offline Dynasty. 30 seasons, that's perfectly fine. I think anything past 30 seasons, I mean, come on, guys. Remember 30 years ago, college football was way different. So if you're 30 seasons in and you're still rocking the same dynasty, I guess you're gonna have to start over. But yeah, so it is pretty interesting, and I overall think that's fine. 32 players. I think if you went even higher, I mean, I think 32 is gonna be crazy to manage. I think we'll end up doing a online dynasty for like this YouTube channel in the community, but I'm excited, or I'm also nervous to see how this is gonna play out, because that seems like that's a lot to deal with. And then another cool feature that they kind of snuck in at the end was the helmet stickers. So I think that's cool. So like the FSU Tomahawks and the Ohio State Buckeyes, they are in the game, and they will dynamically fill out throughout the season in the specific pattern that the schools use. Again, this was in NCAA 14, but I'm glad they brought it back. So it's not like they're, leaving some things out. Like, it seems like they are trying to put everything that they can into the game, which is awesome. I love to see it. It's a great feature. It just makes it like, it just shows the difference between like week 1 and week 12. Like, you'll see like FSU's helmets filled with the Tomahawks. I just love that, especially as an FSU fan. And then we have the themes, the crowd themes. So one of my questions was, how do you decide the crowd themes? And it looks like they are decided for you, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I get it. So the crowd themes happen on the first home game of the year, which I think is weird, rivalry games, and then the game of the week if you are selected. And then that's also when you'll get the Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler as your, I said Kirk and Herbie as the Kirk Herbstreit is the guy. So Kirk Herbstreit and Chris Fowler as your commentating team. So all the other games will have like Reese Davis and Jesse Palmer and forgot the other guy's name. So you have all those guys for the other games, and then you have Kirk and Chris for the game of the week, and then that will determine like which like if you're gonna do a theme game. So that is interesting. So rivalry games, game of the week, first home game. First home game is weird. I feel like the last home game, but maybe that's what they do in real life. I don't really know if that's the case. But yep, overall at least it's in the game, but they don't really give us the customization to do that, which is a little disappointing. I'm slightly disappointed, but I'm just glad that they're in the game. Overall, I'm happy. So moving on to the meat and potatoes of this, you have the coaches, and this is where you get to create your own coach. So you can either be an OC, DC, or a head coach, and there are 4 XP goal categories, and these are all depending on different things that happen during your dynasty. So if you have players drafted, that gets adds XP. Same thing for things you do by winning games, or if you recruit really well, and then general stats. So like if if your quarterback throws for 5,000 passing yards, something like that, you'll get XP in those specific goals. And then we jump into the coach archetypes, which is a new thing for this game. And this is where it kind of separates itself and kind of evolves from the old college football games that we've had in the past. So you get to choose 3. You have to choose one of these 3 base archetypes. You can either be a motivator, a recruiter, or a tactician. And they kind of fit in their own way. So for a recruiter, I'm assuming you'll have like the best on recruiting. Tactician, you'll probably be able to like scheme up plays and stuff like that. And then motivators, you'll have your players rah ready to go, something like that. And the thing is that you can go in any direction you want, like once you pick your archetype, and you can kind of diversify, how you want to be as a coach. So you can either become an expert in one single category, or you can diversify to be a hybrid coach, which I think is really, really cool. And the end goal is to either be a program builder or a CEO. So that's what they like call like I guess that's like the end game, or like the final, like you've reached it. And there's no single formula to reach these statuses, which is really cool. So you can really go in your own path. And there are 11 different archetypes with their own focuses and perks. So these trees are going to go really deep, and you can really focus on all these different things. And no coach, and they most put this out, no coach can be great at everything, so you must fill your staff to fix gaps or make some aspects even stronger. So you could have a staff full of recruiters, but maybe you'll be lacking on, like, on the field stuff. Like maybe you won't be able to have like the best play calling or whatever. And all these abilities come with specific boosts, so like similar to NCAA 14, but they seem to like be more personalized to what you want your team to actually do, because it seemed like in NCAA 14 you just maxed everything out. Now you have to go a specific path based on what you want to do. So like an example, they did the scheme guru who wanted to play like a fast tempo, and if you upgrade these, the fast tempo, you get different perks. So like at tier 4, the chance to see the defensive coverage and hurry up is increased. So like that stuff. And then you can also do one where it's like discipline and communication, where the team is going to perform better on the road. Like they won't get, they weren't going to have like be rattled by the crowd and stuff like that. So those are really cool. Those are really cool features, and I think it's smart, and I think it's a great way to like build up your coaches. And I think a lot of us are going to really screw up the first time. Like we're going to be like, wait, why did I go in this direction? Or if you go in a direction you don't like, you have to kind of like navigate your way out of it and maybe hire people to help with that. Like maybe you decide to be a full recruiter and you end up realizing like you can't, you're just gonna be just like completely screwed when you play on the road, stuff like that. So I am interested to see how that works. I think that's something I'm gonna have to get my hands on, but I think that's gonna be awesome. And then the coaching carousel is back, which is awesome. I think that was a key feature that needed to be back into the game. It's very similar to NCAA 14 with a few upgrades that I do like. Kind of like quality of life updates is what it seems like. So when you sign, you have expectations that you have to meet, and if you don't meet them, you'll get fired. It says bad things happen, but probably just means you're going to get fired. And then your job security can fluctuate throughout the season, so it's dynamic, which is cool. And when different things happen, it can change your job security. So like if you beat an FCS school, it's probably not going to go up that much, but if you lose to an FCS school, that's gonna ruffle some feathers that at the decision makers for your job. And then if you beat a rival, maybe that helps a lot. So that's cool. And I think the best part about this coaching carousel is you can now fire and hire coordinators, which I think is great, because let's say you have a coordinator and you have them going down this specific archetype and it's just not working out. Like your offensive coordinator, you don't like the offense that you're running, maybe you fire them. And I think they're on 2-year contracts that auto renew, and you can choose to fire them at any time. So it's not like there's no like money. There isn't anything that has to do with money that's causing anything to work, but it's like that's just kind of how it works. And then one other cool thing is that your OCs and DCs can get hired away. So while you could have a really, really good offensive coordinator, they could get hired to be or a head coach somewhere else, or they go, all throughout. The thing is that like it's a revolving door, and like a domino effect is what they called it. So like for example, if you have a really good offensive coordinator, well, and they leave to become a head coach, now you need to go find someone, and you can go poach someone else's offensive coordinator, or you can take someone's head coach that just got fired and make them your offensive coordinator. So there's a lot of cool things you can do, and I think it adds a new dynamic versus just starting the season and you just hope to God you kept your coordinators, or if you just realize you're starting from scratch because they left for different jobs. So I do like that you have that control now. Very, very nice. And also a cool thing is that schools use different characteristics to determine who they hire. So their coach level, the scheme, the archetype, their pipeline, which is like recruiting, and the coach prestige is going to determine who they're going to end up hiring. And you get a coach score, or coach fit score is what it says. So I think this is nice. So I think it's going to prevent you from making huge jumps after 1 year. So like if you're the offensive coordinator at like Kent State, I don't think you're going to jump to like Alabama's offensive coordinator like right away. I don't think that's going to work unless you have like the #1 offense in the country. But I think it's going to take a little bit longer to be able to do that, and you may have to take a few jumps to get to where you want to get to. So overall, I do think the coaching is awesome. I think they really nailed it out of the park. I don't think there's anything I would want else that's in it except for maybe real coaches, but I don't really care that much, honestly. I'd rather have real players and real coaches, just being straight up. So I think this is really cool. I think they nailed it out of the park with the coaches. And then lastly, we have the recruiting, and this is where, again, they just keep cooking. So from the bat, and when you create your recruiting board, there's 3,500 recruits that are generated per class, and they range from a 0-star to a 5-star. And the cool thing I noticed about this was kind of like they kind of snuck this in, is that big talent is in places that is accurate to real life. So for example, South Florida and Atlanta are like the hot spots for a lot of talent. And then they also mentioned something like good QBs are like mainly in Southern California. And then if you want big receivers, they're in East Texas. But if you want really fast receivers, they're in Florida. And I'm like, okay, well, if I want a really good offensive lineman, I'm going to go to Iowa. Or if I want a tight end, I'm going to go to Nebraska. Like, you know, they'll get those corn-fed, you know, guys. So I think that's really cool. I like how that shows. And I think it's going to change up how recruiting works because, like, for example, if you're in Iowa, you're probably going to be, like, a bigger team that might just be, like, a ground and pound versus, like, a team that's in the Floridas that are just more, like, you know, more flashy or something like that. So that is really cool. I think that's awesome. And going into like the recruiting parts, what recruits care about. So there's 14 different motivations, and that kind of breaks down to like your my school, which is almost a carbon copy of NCAA 14, except they added the brand exposure, which is supposed to be like the NIL of this, which really that means it's not that big. Like the NIL part of the Dynasty, I know like Road to Glory, it's supposed to have a more expanded like thing on NIL, but honestly, I'm okay with that. Like the brand thing, like I just think like if NIL was like too big of a thing, it would have just broken the game. So I'm kind of glad that they did. You know, they did have the brand exposure, which is like the de facto NIL, but I think this is fine. I don't mind this at all. And yeah, so like different motivations could determine if they like your school, and if they have deal breakers based off any of them, you can get locked out, which is cool. And then it's broken into 3 different stages. It's discovery, pitch, and close. Now, there's a bunch of, you know, words about what this is, but the way I like to interpret this is that the discovery is like the scouting phase. Like, you're seeing, you know, what overall they're going to be, what are their, you know, their ratings and stuff, all that. And then the pitch one is like once you're in like your top 5, like you're starting to recruit them, you enter their top 5, then you can pitch them. So I think they have like a top 8, a top 5, and a top 3. So if you once you enter the top 5, you can then start to pitch them, which I think is where you're like actively recruiting them. So you're hitting them with all these different angles. You can hit them with these different pitches that cost different amounts of hours, and overall the goal for that is to get them to come on a visit, and that's the closing stage. And when you get them to come on a visit, you can, you know, add complimentary visitors, kind of like how it worked in NCAA 14. So if you have a quarterback, bring a wide receiver recruit, or vice versa, stuff like that. Bring them on visits. And I think in this case, like, do you bring 3 running backs on the same visit? Because they're gonna be like, oh, I want to be the guy in the class. Maybe that will piss off a few of them. So there are some cool, interesting mechanics when it comes to this. And I think the other cool thing is that once you have someone on campus, you can like pick an activity for them to do or something like that. I heard about that, which is interesting. Like, yeah, I wonder what these activities are. I'm sure they're E for everyone, unlike what it actually happens in college. So I'm sure EA is definitely being a little cheeky with that, I think, in that case. But one of the cool things is that a recruit can verbally commit to you, but they can also decommit. So I was right. So in my last video that I posted yesterday, I asked, like, it said verbally commit. I'm like, that means they probably can decommit, and they actually can decommit. So eventually, if like you fail to meet one of their deal breakers, they will decommit. So that is interesting. So I'm wondering if like someone will commit to you while a deal breaker is like being worked on, but let's say at the end of the year, you're like, you don't end up meeting it, they will just flip. So I want to see like how common is this? Like, is your top recruit always going to flip if you're a smaller school? So that overall is interesting. I think that is a really cool mechanic, having the ability to have decommitments. And then that's really cool. And then they break it down into the signing day part, and there's two different ones. There's early signing day and national signing day. And early signing day is where like most of the people will commit, and once they are, if they're committed to you on early signing day, they sign, and then they're on your roster, by next year, which is fine. So like you're not gonna lose them at that point. But then some of the people won't sign, and you'll have to continue to recruit them into national signing day, which I will get into in the second once we talk about the transfer portal. So we're about to get into that. So next up, I have the players leaving. So players leaving under the recruiting tab, which, I guess it's just because the thing is, like, players can transfer out if you fail to keep promises that you made to them as a recruit. High overall players can declare from the draft, and you can also persuade players to hit the portal. So you basically have, it's like the de facto version of cutting them. And you cannot instantly cut freshmen that you sign. So if you sign a really bad freshman, I think you're just gonna have to deal with them for a year, which is interesting because you only have 85. I think your roster limit is 85, which is 10 more than what NCAA 14 had, but still, that is, you got to make sure that you have the right people. But yeah, that's where it gets interesting. So you can have people transfer, you can have people declare, or you can basically kick people out. So that's kind of how players can leave. And then now we have what's called the transfer portal. So the transfer portal is a thing. So it's a 4-week window between early signing day and national signing day, basically. And anyone can transfer. So there's no like limit. So you can transfer as many times as you want. You could probably transfer 4 times in your college career. And when it compared to high school recruits, transfers will commit fast. And high value players, like a 5-star transfer, typically will come into the portal with like a top 5. And if you're not in that top 5, you can't even talk to them. And lower ones you will be able to, and you'll be able to kind of pitch them kind of how it was with the high school recruiting. But they quickly make decisions and will commit and sign to you on national signing day. So that is interesting. I do think that is a cool little second, part. So like if your early signing day you kind of whiff, you can kind of like make up for the gaps on national signing day with the transfers and try to get people to come to you. Or maybe a 5-star. I think they did like they put an example of a 5-star into the transfer portal and they wanted to transfer to your school. You're like, oh, might as well take them, right? Who cares? And then lastly, we have the thing where it's position changes. So athletes automatically will get assigned based on their primary archetype. So if you bring on an athlete and they're like, their highest overall is going to be a wide receiver, they'll probably just start as a wide receiver. And it's really similar to NCAA 14. And then the player progression, I like how they did this. They actually gave us dev traits, and it's similar to kind of how Madden is, but there's no like X factors. Like that's just that's just how quickly people like they'll naturally progress throughout their college career. But there's obviously like some guys who are gonna like immediately break out. So you have the normal players, impact players, star, and elite. So yeah, so I'm assuming if you sign a 5-star and they're like the best, they're probably gonna have like the elite where they're gonna like become a starter almost instantly or something. So that's basically it, guys. I think that's my entire deep dive of the 3 pillars of customization, the recruiting, and the coaching. I just think that's a lot to take in, but I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, hit that like button down below. But other than that, this has been Jagnol, and I will see you guys next time.